Hello again. We hear so much about the terrible treatment of African slaves in the Caribbean that I thought we might spare a thought for the white people whose treatment was far harsher than that of black slaves. Most of us are familiar with the concept of transportation to Australia, a punishment inflicted on convicted criminals in Britain during the first half of the 19th century, often as a supposedly milder alternative to hanging. The conditions under which some people laboured were harsh, and they were subject to flogging if they attempted to escape from the penal colonies to which they had been sent. Although Australia is well known as a destination in this context, it was across the Atlantic that the first penal transportations from Britain took place. Some were sent to the American colonies and others to the Caribbean. In 1634, for instance, 86% of the inhabitants of Barbados were white Europeans. Many of these had been transported to the island as a punishment. Others were indentured servants. I suspect that this expression might need a little explanation. Such was the desperate poverty in Britain and Ireland during the 17th and 18th centuries that some people would take any steps to secure food, lodging, and a new start in life. One way of doing this was to sign a contract with an employer in the colonies, binding oneself to work for this person for a set number of years, typically 7. There is biblical foundation for the 7-year period of servitude. I won't go into it now. You'll find it written in the first 5 books of the Bible. In return, the employer or master would pay for passage across the Atlantic and guarantee living quarters and food while the person so indentured worked for him. There were several drawbacks to this scheme. For one thing, indentured servants lost all their rights and became little better than slaves, being unable to leave their employment and being also subject in some cases to physical punishment by whipping. They had no recourse at all to law. Something which was seldom fully explained to those signing up in this way for a new start in the Americas or the Caribbean was that their master could sell the contract on to another person. Some such servants found themselves arriving in Barbados and being auctioned at a market to the highest bidder. Conditions for many indentured white labourers on the plantations were worse than those of black slaves. And the reason for this was a simple matter of economics. Black slaves were like expensive farm animals, working sheepdog, say, or a horse. The owner could expect to get a lifetime of work from them, and the longer they lived, then the more work would be done. There was an incentive in preserving their health and ensuring that they had enough to eat. This was not at all the case with indentured servants. Their master knew that they had only a set number of years to wring as much labour from these unfortunate individuals as could possibly be done. There was every reason, therefore, to work them as hard as they could be worked and to skimp on food and also medical attention if they fell ill. Many of these people didn't live long enough to obtain their freedom at the end of their 7 years of bondage. In the 17th century, a French writer observed the abuses of this system and wrote as follows: "There were masters so cruel that they were forbidden to purchase any more, and I knew one at Guadalupe who had buried more than 50 upon his plantation, whom he had killed by hard work and neglect when they were sick. The cruelty proceeded from their having them for some years only, which made them spare the negro rather than these poor creatures." In the course of time, it became known in Britain that there was more to indentured servitude than appeared on the surface, and fewer people were willing to sign up for such arrangements. This led to healthy young men in ports being seized by stealth and carried on board ships heading across the Atlantic, a system similar in many ways to the press gangs of the Navy. By the end of the 17th century, though, slaves from West Africa had become the standard workforce in the Americas and the Caribbean. Once again, this proved to be a matter of brute economics rather than any subtler motivation. One black writer has summed up the financial implication of the two competing systems in this way. A white servant's services for 10 years amounted to the price of a Negro slave. Three Negroes worked better than and cost as much as one white man. In the face of such remorseless logic, there was little to be done other than to phase out indentured servitude in favour of black slavery. One powerful incentive for the expansion of slavery in this form was that it greatly increased the profits of the owners of ships trading with the New World. Thus, economic expedience rather than racism or colonialism was the driving force behind the transatlantic slave trade. To understand this, we need to think a little bit about the nature of trade at that time. Merchant ships typically sailed to another part of the world either to collect some valuable commodity or to transport that commodity from that place to somewhere where it could be sold. This meant that often the ship sailed either there or back with empty holds, and that part of the voyage would bring in no profit for the owners of the ship. Once the so-called triangular trade had become established, this wasted time had been altogether eliminated. At every stage of the voyage, the ship would be carrying valuable goods. So it would start with manufactured items to Africa, then slaves from Africa to America, and then on the return journey to Britain, it would bring things like sugar and tobacco. So there was no downtime. Every voyage was useful. Every voyage was profitable. I thought it worth just mentioning this because if we're not careful when talk turns to the transatlantic slave trade and the plight of black slaves in America and the Caribbean, we might forget that it wasn't only black slaves, and that the truth of the matter is that the white servants and the white people sent there by the court had a harsher time than did black people.